How's it going, everybody? So this video is going to be covering polynomial long division, okay? Now, as you can see here, there's a little bit of a snippet that I took from the notes I've done in the past describing the process of how to use polynomial long division. And so this right here is going to be used to divide a polynomial by a degree that is lesser. And the idea is it has a couple of steps that you can use. I found these steps to be very beneficial from someone that I had spoken with about it, and I feel like this is probably a good go-to as far as how to go about it. Step number one is to divide the first term of the divisor into the first term of the dividend. Now that will make more sense in just a moment, but make sure you write that down. Then we're going to multiply the term by the divisor, then subtract from the dividend, and then repeat until the exponent in the divisor is greater than that of the dividend. Now, basically what that means is we're going to repeat processes 1, 2, and 3 over and over and over again until we reach the very end of what we're dividing. Now, whatever's left over is going to be the remainder. And for some, you kind of remember that at the, after you finished the long division, what was left over was, what you had to tag on to the very end of your answer. And so what's probably going to be best is we just jump into a problem. And so let's try this one. So say you were given a 2x to the fourth plus a 3x cubed plus a 5x minus a 1 is going to be divided by an x squared plus a 3x plus a 2. Now, as you can see, the setup up at the top is kind of what we're looking for. Now, it'll look something like this. You'll have 2x to the fourth plus 3x cubed. And now keep in mind, something that you're going to need to be aware of is that you'll notice how it jumps to just a 5x. Typically in the progression, we should have an x to the fourth, an x to the third, and then we should have an x squared. But because of the fact that it's not there, we have to put a 0 placeholder. And yes, you have to do that every time there is a term that is missing. The same goes for whatever you're using to divide. So you got to always put those 0 placeholders when appropriate. And then we have our 5x and then a minus 1, okay? Now, we're going to put what we're dividing with on the outside, so our divisor, x squared plus 3x plus 2. Now, according to how the steps read, it says divide the first term by the divisor, right? So divide the first term of the divisor into the first term of the dividend. So the dividend is what's inside, and the first term is this guy right here. Then this is the first term of the divisor. So we're going to take our 2x to the fourth divided by our x squared. Now, this right here, right off to the side somewhere, don't write it underneath everything. I'm only writing it like this so that way I can go ahead and kind of demonstrate something. But I kind of have this written off to the side, okay? What this is trying to communicate is that I have myself a 2x times x times x times x, right? Because there's 4 of them. And then I have myself an x times x. Well, this right here is going to show that these are in common, so we would go ahead and cross those out. Those would go away. And what's left is but a 2x squared. There's 2 x's left, right? Now, this, of course, is the part that we're going to put in our quotient, okay? And we're going to put it above the x squared category. So x squareds go with x squareds, cubes go with cubes, and make sure it's just all nice and lined up, all kinds of pretty. Now, another way you could think about this is, I want my x squared to become a 2x to the fourth, right? I want him to become that. And so you would basically ask the question, what would I need to multiply x squared by so that it would become a 2x to the fourth? And the answer is what we just found. It would be 2x squared. That's how we would accomplish that goal. Now, once you do that, you're then going to go ahead and distribute this to every term you see right here, okay? So that would give us our 2x to the fourth. And then 2x squared times a 3x, that's going to give you a 6x cubed. Notice how everything's lining up. My to the fourth's lined up, my to the third's lined up. And watch, the squareds will line up as well. 2x squared times 2, that's going to give you a 4x squared. It should always line up. You should never multiply and then all of a sudden your x's get all out of whack. Like you shouldn't have like an x to the 4th and then randomly you have a 5 right here. Like that should not happen, okay? It should all be the same exponent. Now it goes on to say that once you multiply the term by the divisor, you're going to subtract from the dividend. So we're going to subtract it. And this goes back to how I mentioned a while back that we're going to have to be comfortable with subtracting vertically, okay? Now remember that subtraction sign is getting distributed to each one of these terms. So you got to make sure you switch it in your head that that's not a plus 6x cubed. That's now a minus, right? 6x cubed. And that's not a plus 4x squared. That's a minus 4x squared. So just be aware of that, okay? Now, the whole goal of all this is we wanted this to zero out, right? And so this is going to go to 0. And that's what we want. We wanted that initial term to go to 0. Now we're going to simplify the rest. So I have a 3 minus 6. That's a negative 3x cubed. And then a 0 minus 4, that's going to be a 4x squared. Now, after you go ahead and do this, you're going to repeat this process, but you got to make sure to bring down the next term, okay? So you're going to bring this term down, and that's going to give you a plus 5x. Now what you're going to do is repeat the process. How can I get an x squared, back to this guy again, how can I make him become a negative 3x cubed? Like, what would I need to multiply him by? Now, the truth is, all you would need is a negative 3x to make that happen. Now, if you couldn't see that right off the bat, you could have gone ahead and did the same thing we did over here. You'd have your negative 3x cubed, and then you have your x squared, and then you'd have negative 3x, x. You cross off what they, have in common, and you're left with your negative 3x. So utilize that idea if that makes more sense for you, but try to really graduate to the idea of, what do I need to multiply by, and then moving from there. Now, once again, we're going to distribute that negative 3x to the divisor. So negative 3x times x squared is a negative 3x cubed. Now that was intended, right? We wanted them to be the same. And then negative 3x times a 3x, that's going to give us a negative 9x squared. Once again, notice the cubes lined up, the squareds lined up, and next the x's should also line up. So I have a negative 3x times a 2. That's going to give me a negative 6x. And now I'm going to subtract. And once again, this subtraction sign will distribute to each one of these terms, changing the symbol, right? Now, when we go ahead and we start the process of subtraction, that becomes positive, so we get a 0 here. That was the intention. Now we have negative 4x squared plus 9, right? So that's going to give me a 5x squared. And then I have myself a 5 plus a 6, okay? That's actually going to give me an 11x, okay? Let me go ahead and kind of move that up a little bit for myself. And now we have everything lined up nice and pretty. Now, once we do that, we repeat process because I have another number here. I'm going to bring down my negative 1. Now, once again, what would I need to multiply x squared by to get a 5x squared? And simply, you just need a 5. Now, once again, you could have done this, 5x squared over your 5, and you have not over 5, my apologies, over your x squared, and you'd have 5x times x, and then x times x. Boom, the x's go away, leaving you with the 5. Now, distribute that 5 to each term, and that's going to give you a 5x squared. 5 times 3x is a 15x. Once again, notice the x squareds are lining up, the x's are lining up, and the constants will then line up because that gives us a 10. Now we're going to subtract. And so this will go to 0. Then I have 11 minus 15. That's going to give me a negative 4x. And then I have myself a negative 1 minus a 10. That will give me a negative 11. Now, you'll notice there's no other number to bring on down, right? We're all out of numbers. So that means we're going to go ahead and utilize this piece of information as my remainder. Okay, this is the remainder. Okay, and we tack on the remainder to our answer. Okay, so the answer to this thing is our quotient up here. Okay, our 2x squared minus 3x plus 5. And what sometimes people like to do is they like to put it in parentheses. And now let's talk about the remainder. And so we add the remainder on, and we have our negative 4x minus 11 over our x squared plus 3x plus 2. And that right there came from the divisor. And so this would be our official answer, okay? That's our official answer. So let's go ahead and try this process again. Now let's take a look at this one. Let's do x squared, or cubed actually, x cubed plus 7x squared plus 10x minus 6, okay, is going to be divided by x squared minus 2, okay? So let's go ahead. Let's put everything in. So I have my little dividend right here, okay? So I have x cubed plus 7x squared plus 10x minus 6. And nothing, there was no zero placeholder because we had all the terms. But for my divisor, I'm missing something. I have my x squared, but I don't have my x. So I need a 0x and then my minus 2. Now, let's go ahead. Let's divide this in. So how can I make an x squared become an x cubed? Well, I would simply need an x. So I'm going to plug that in. So I have x times x squared, that's x cubed. X times a 0x, that would be a 0x squared. And then x times a negative 2 is a minus 2x. And you subtract. Now this would go to 0. Then what you're going to end up with is a minus, or not even a minus, a plus 7, right? Because that's just a 0. And then a 10 minus a negative 2, that's going to be positive, so that's a 12x. Okay? Now we need to bring down the next term. Okay? That's a minus 6. So how can I make an x squared become a 7x squared? Well, you need a 7, right? So you'd have a positive 7. And distribute that to each term. So you have 7x squared. 7 times the 0, that's a 0x. 7 times the negative 2, that's a negative 14. And we subtract. And so we'd have 0, and then a plus 12x. And then a negative makes positive, so then that would be a negative 6 plus 14. That's going to give me an 8. Now, there's nothing left to go ahead and bring down, so we're done. Okay, so that's going to be my remainder. And I have myself my x plus 7 plus my 12x plus 8 over, and then it would be my divisor x squared minus 2. And guys, that is how you divide using long division. Alrighty. Thank you guys for your time. If you have any questions, let me know. Good job.